Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And I'll tell you what, before we get going here, I am so excited about this week's show. This is probably, I know we're getting to the off season. It's almost Memorial Day. And, you know, baseball and softball are still playing. Don't get me wrong. We have some great content on this episode. We have Pete Fiutak from College Football News. He's the publisher of one of my favorite websites. He's going to talk about his Arizona football preview. And we have Travis Graf from Rivals Recruiting to talk national recruiting, to talk about basketball and what Tommy Lloyd's up to. And there's going to be a lot of good news on the horizon, Shane. So I'm thinking this is like the ultimate in positivity. Now, I want to put a cap on that by saying during buy or sell, I'm sure there will be a question where positivity may not reign supreme. But for the most part, when it comes to Arizona athletics, this is a pretty good week.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a little about Arizona sports in general, not University of Arizona, but Arizona sports in general. Not looking forward to that. But yeah, I think we try to provide a lot of good information, and we do our best, but we also like talking to people who are in the know and who have great insight, not just in the state of Arizona, but about the Arizona Wildcats from people who are outside the state and have different perspectives and see things maybe a little clearer than we do. So I think we have a great football analyst, great basketball analyst, going to provide a lot of good info. And yeah, I know we'll talk about that other stuff too.
All right, so let's get into buy or sell, powered by our friends at Ice Shaker. Check out iceshaker.com and get yourself one of these Wildcat Country ice shakers. All you have to do, go to iceshaker.com. You can type in Wildcat Country, get one of these. And if you want $5 off, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C. And these things are awesome. They are durable. You'll have them for life. And our cool logos on them.
You just got to keep them in front of you there, Eric, because it's disappearing otherwise. There you go. That's fine.
Yeah, there we go. With my background. Yes, thank you. All right, so buy or sell. Before I get into buy or sell, let me just say this. It was a great week for Arizona baseball, and not just with what we saw on the field. The first draft pick from the 2021 MLB draft made it to the major leagues last Friday night, and it was none other than Chase Silseth, former Arizona pitcher who debuted with 6 shutout innings for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. How shocking is that, Shane? He was the first guy to make it to the major leagues from last year's draft class.
Yeah, that's amazing. And from last year, he pitched for Arizona a year ago, and he's in the. That hardly ever happens, even with some of the top guys there typically in the minors for a whole season. So what Silseth did was fantastic. I mean, he was. And the thing is, I mean, he wasn't spectacular. He was good. He's very good.
Pitcher. Yeah.
He wasn't the guy you'd think, oh yeah, he's going to be a starter right away in the major leagues. So that was a remarkable, and I would say kind of underrated, underreported story among Arizona sports, alumni or not. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I mean, you look at what Arizona pitchers are doing. Tyler McGill, before he got blown up and then injured in the last week, was crushing it for the Mets. Okay, Mark Melanson for the D-backs.
Yeah, I was going to say
we won't talk about him.
Well, he's carrying on tradition of Diamondbacks closers not being able to close.
We won't be able to talk. We won't talk about that. All right, number one in buy or sell, Shane. After winning the series against Oregon State, who was, I believe, number one in the country at the time, the Arizona baseball team is a lock for the NCAA tournament, regardless of what happens this weekend in Eugene and next weekend in Scottsdale for the Pac-12 basketball tournament. A lock. Buy or sell?
Ooh, I'm going to sell the lock. I think they're very much on the right side of the bubble, assuming you call it a bubble in baseball. I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, we talked last week. They've had some it's been rough going for Arizona for a good month plus, but they have an opportunity in front of them when the Oregon State coming to Tucson, and they took full advantage. They almost swept them. They had a great chance to win that first game as well. I think they lost 11-9, but they took care of business in the last two. Massive wins, especially in the baseball. When you have so many games, they really needed more than one win.
They did.
On the men's basketball side, you beat the number 1 and number 2 team. It could be a huge shift in your NCAA tournament chances. Baseball, you really need more than one.
But Arizona jumped into the top 25.
They did. They're back to number 25. The RPI didn't move much. I was kind of surprised. I don't know how much that really matters. I think when the selection committee puts together their teams, they're going to look at those games and it's really going to count in Arizona's favor. But yeah, I would still feel better. Certainly if they took at least one at Oregon, which is, I think, around the top, around 60 or so in RPI. So it'd be quality wins, but not great looking loss, I guess. And of course, you have the wrinkle now with the Pac-12 tournament, and if they win that, then they're in automatically. But I'd like to see a couple more victories, at least one in Eugene. I think would be important. I think if they get swept in that series, it eliminates some of the work they did against Oregon State.
Yes.
So a lock, I'd have to sell that, unfortunately. But do I feel a lot better about it than I did a week ago? Absolutely. I think as of right now, they're in for sure.
Okay. So I'm going to agree with you. I think they have to win at least one more. Okay, fine. So great. I'm with you there. Now, I just want to throw this scenario out at you. Arizona goes to Eugene and sweeps this weekend. Arizona gets in the Pac-12 tournament, wins 4 games, and wins the Pac-12 tournament. Will they host a regional at that point?
I think that's a bridge too far. I don't think so. I think that they're just too far behind. Now if they win the Pac-12 tournament, if they beat Oregon State and forget who the other top teams are in RPI. Look, they're in 4th place in the Pac-12. So you parlay that with a Pac-12 tournament victory. Maybe. I think that's probably out of the question at the moment. I think that they're in, but I think that going from, they're on the right side of the bubble to a top 16. I think that's unrealistic, unfortunately.
Okay, fair. All right. Just wanted to throw that out there. Okay. Number 2. Now the women's team made it to the softball tournament, which is great. I mean, they kept the streak going. Was it 25 years in a row? Something
35
like that.
Now, isn't it?
35. Something like, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So congratulations to Caitlin Lowe and her team for doing that. So they're going to Columbia, Missouri. They're in the Missouri regional. I think Missouri was like the 15 seed or something like that.
Yeah.
Buy or sell. Arizona wins 1 or more games this weekend in that regional.
I'll buy that they win 1. And let's remember, even though they struggled, Arizona softball struggled this season, and that's an understatement for their standards. The Pac-12 is the best conference in the country for softball. So I think that they'll take at least 1 game. I think if everything goes right, like, their hitting is fantastic. And they have so many great underclassmen who are fantastic hitters who the future is bright in that regard. They're just missing, like we talk about constantly, or like I talk about constantly, that top 10 national pitcher. So I think you're always 1 away from contending. But as far as the hitting, they could win a slugfest, and I think they'll win at least 1 in Columbia for sure.
All right. So what are the chances, in your opinion, of them actually winning the region?
I'd give them like a 1 out of 4 chance, 1 out of 3.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, there are 4 teams in the region. So yes, I understand. Right. You're giving them 1 out, but I mean, realistically,
but not every team has a 1 out of 4 chance, though. It's not even like that. I think like Missouri is probably going to come out of it, even though they got a favorable draw because Missouri is one of the, and I don't pretend like I've seen Missouri play softball all year, but they are one of the weaker hosts in this group.
So if Arizona were to win this region, Shane, would you say you'd be shocked? Would you say you'd be surprised? Like what's the adjective if we're still talking about Arizona softball playing in the next round in the super regionals next weekend?
Surprised, but not shocked.
Okay.
Upsets like that happen all the time. I think that they could definitely get there. Again, their pitching is just not there. They don't have that start, but they have so many great young hitters that Carly Scoopin is one of them, and they have a bunch of others. I think that they could win a slugfest. I think they'll win at least 1 game to get out of Columbia. I kind of doubt it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, I'm going to buy that too. I don't think they're going to get out of Columbia, but get us a win. Don't get shut out in the postseason. I think we would all say, okay, on to next year. Wasn't a complete disaster as we thought it would be. 6 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah, if they didn't make it at all, that would have been bad.
Would have been a disaster. Yeah. Okay. Number 3, buy or sell. I have the feeling that something is brewing with Arizona men's basketball. I know there's the rumor about the kid from Washington State. We'll talk to Travis Graf about that later on. Mm-hmm. Are you buying or selling my hunch?
Well, now is your hunch built on some inside information?
It is not. No, it is not.
Okay.
No.
But you're feeling better than you were a couple weeks ago. You're not in panic mode anymore.
Well, we're going to see if Travis can talk me down from the ledge. Before we interview him.
Yeah.
I will say I read some things that the coaching staff expects Dalen Terry to come back.
Okay.
So the ledge is not, I'm backing away from the ledge a little bit, but I'm still uneasy. But I have a feeling something is brewing.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're going to land at least another top high school guy or transfer or both.
Something is going to happen by the time we do the show next week, whenever that is.
I'll sell that it'll happen that quickly because you just never know. But look, I've been a buyer in Tommy Lloyd getting some great guys for this upcoming season, and he's already done a decent job. But so in the next week, I don't know. I don't have any inside intel, so I'll probably sell that for now. But I will buy that he'll round up the class very effectively.
Okay, fair. I'm going to buy it. Something just tells me we're on the brink of something happening, so that I can actually give you a legitimate buy or sell like I did with women's basketball in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So something's going to happen. Okay. Maybe it's this kid from Washington State. I don't even want to try to pronounce his name. We'll have Travis try that later on, but it'd be great. He's a nice little role player. That would be a good player for Arizona to have. Okay. Number 4 in buy or sell. Arizona has not had a quarterback transfer among their big 4 quarterbacks, which is obviously Delora, Fafita, who's not transferring. He's new. And then obviously Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer. Are you buying or selling that all 4 will be on the roster come San Diego State on September 3rd?
I'll buy it because I think that they would have left already, whoever's going to leave. No, and maybe not. Maybe I could certainly be wrong about that. But I think part of it, Eric, is that if they leave, are they guaranteed to start at an FBS school program? No, I don't think any of them are. So I think that
well, Delora might.
Well, Delora, obviously, but Plummer or Cruz. I mean, I think if they knew that they would start somewhere else, they might go. But I think that a lot of guys
I missed one. There are 5 guys, Shane. There's 5.
We got McLeod as well.
So you're telling me that all 5 are going to be on the roster at the same time come San Diego State?
Yeah. I'll make a bold prediction and say that they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because again, I not because they're really that loyal, or maybe they are, but I think it's more just because there's no guarantees that they're going to be able to go play somewhere else right away.
I am selling the crap out of this one.
All right,
I am selling.
You're probably right about that.
I mean, you can't 5 quarterbacks on. There's no way, in my opinion. I think Jordan McLeod is long gone once fall camp starts, and I think that Gunnar Cruz will also be gone. I could see Will Plummer sticking around. He's a local kid.
Yeah.
He has some playing experience. He might be the primary backup to Delora this year. Not that, I'd probably play Noah over him, but I just cannot see any way that Jordan McLeod sticks around if he doesn't win this job.
Do you think McLeod and Cruz, you think it's possible that they think that, well, I'd be in line for the starting job this season if I didn't get hurt last year, and maybe they really genuinely think they could get that job back?
I don't think that Jaden Delora is on the roster if Jordan McLeod stayed healthy last year. How about that?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Jordan McLeod would be the guy. I agree.
A
lot happier to have Jaden Delora. Having watched him at Washington State, this kid's a player. I mean, he's good.
Mm-hmm.
McLeod, threw 5 picks against Oregon. I wasn't buying Jordan McLeod's performance. I know he was probably better than Will Plummer, though Plummer was gutsy. Cruz stunk. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it.
I really wish we had a chance to watch Jordan McLeod in a couple more games, including finishing that UCLA game, because I think he was headed in the right direction. Now, maybe he would have regressed and thrown 5 picks the next game, but I think I saw enough potential there. It's like, okay, I want to see more. Like I was content. Okay, McLeod is going to be the guy the rest of the season, and I can live with that. And then, of course, he gets hurt. But yeah, I maybe I'm crazy for thinking they're all going to come back. I just feel like one of them would have made a move by now if they.
I can't believe they haven't.
Yeah,
I mean, if I'm Gunnar Cruz, like, you're never going to play.
If you would ask me 3 months ago, I probably would have said, yeah, at least one of them's gone. But they're still here in mid-May. So you never know.
If I were Cruz or Plummer, like I'm in McLeod, I'm probably transferring to whatever FCS team will have me start right away. I'm going right away. Yeah. Because you're not playing. Jayden de Laura is the guy, and Noah Fafita is the other guy. Like, you're not getting on the. I don't. Get
well, you know what? One more thing to add before we move on is, Jedd Fisch is obviously a very good salesman, and his coaching staff is too. I mean, look at the guys they brought in. So maybe they use that sales job to keep these guys around and say, look, we might need you. You could still be the guy. I'm going to give you a legitimate chance, even though, I mean, Jayden de Laura is likely going to be the guy. But it's just something to think about.
If Jayden de Laura doesn't start, I would be stunned. Like,
me too.
I think there's a better chance that Arizona women's softball wins the national championship than Jayden de Laura, if healthy, does not start week.
You're talking about women's softball.
Women's softball, yes. I just thought I'd point that out. Arizona softball
there you go.
Wins the national championship.
Not to be confused with men's baseball.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I had an
fair enough. Okay. Bonus question this week, Shane. Some may consider it loser talk, but I have to admit I was wrong. I had said to you, I said, Shane, when are we going to record this week's Wildcat Country? And I said this to you like earlier in the weekend. I don't want to record on Wednesday night because we're going to have the Suns game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. And you said the Suns will not be playing. And I said, come on, Shane. And you were right. I mean,
well, you thought the Suns were going to sweep them too.
I thought it was going to be a blowout series, and it looked good after 2 games, and then the rest is history. I mean,
the nail when the nail in the coffin is when it was when Stephen A. Smith said the Mavericks are going to get blown out. Then it's like, well, congrats, Dallas. Good luck in the conference finals. All
right. So aside from Arizona athletics, in general, Shane, Arizona sports are cursed. Buy or sell?
I don't really believe in curses. I just think that there are certain cities or states where it's just not meant to be. Look at Arizona, you look at Minnesota, some other sad city, Buffalo in a smaller sense, where it just, there are winning cities and states and they're losing cities and states. And Arizona just happens to be a loser. I know you got the Mercury and you got the Rattlers, et cetera, et cetera. But, you talk about the big 4 sports, NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL. And then you talk about, I'll tell you what, this is one area where ASU and U of A fans might be able to agree, because ASU football fans I think they really think that their program is elite and they just need to get back to the Rose Bowl or whatever, which they haven't been to and since all current ASU players are born. And then it's kind of the same thing with Arizona men's basketball. We're still waiting to get back to the Final Four, and it just doesn't happen. So you parlay that with the Suns, who best season in program in franchise history, and the complete choke job they did. And then a few months earlier, the Cardinals, who started 7-0. So a few months ago, I was thinking, hey, you got Arizona men's basketball, you got the Suns. Between both of them, maybe one of them would win a championship, and neither of them even sniffed a championship.
Not even close.
It's brutal. Nope. And it was even worse. As cynical as I am, Eric, that game 7 was even worse than I thought. I couldn't have pictured it being that bad.
Worst game 7 of the Suns Mavericks or Arizona Houston.
Oh, in terms of performance, it was the Suns by far. Right. I mean, at least the Arizona game. I mean, it never. In terms
really of your disappointment, in terms of your disappointment for the game, which
I would go Suns too, because that was a best of 7 series, and I feel like in the NBA there are fewer upsets as opposed to the NCAA tournament, where, I mean, like we talked about before, Eric, Kansas was not the best team in the country, but they won the tournament. They won it fair and square, but it's a best of 1.
Right.
Anything can happen in one game. You have a bad matchup, you're done. Yeah. And that's what happened to Arizona. NBA, it's best of 7. The Suns were up 2-0. They had to win 2 of the next 5, and they couldn't do it. So that to me was a much bigger letdown in the grand scheme of things.
All right, I'm going to throw a really random one on your question. It's not really a buy or sell.
Okay.
Which player is more likely to be on the Suns next year? Remember, they do not have a draft pick as of now. When I say this, DeAndre Ayton or Christian Coloco? Which Arizona center is more likely to be on the team next year?
If they had a draft pick, if they had toward the end of the first round, then maybe Coloco. But it's such a crapshoot. I think it would have to be Ayton between the two of them. I mean, I don't think either of them will be.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. I would say Coloco, because I think Ayton's definitely gone.
Yeah, but the Ayton at least has a still obviously tied to the Suns, whereas Koloko could end up anywhere.
Right.
So I wouldn't mind seeing it. I wouldn't mind seeing Koloko join the team. I think he'd be great. And Ayton drives me nuts because if that guy believed in himself half as much as most people who watch him do, he could dominate the league. And here he is, we yelled him, just throw it down. And he just, I don't want to go too sideways on that, but Ayton has got all the potential in the world, and the dude just drives me nuts.
No loser talk here on Wildcat Country. Coming up next, let's talk positives. We're going to talk with Pete Fiutak from College Football News, and then Travis Graf from Rivals Basketball Recruiting. It's all good news here on the rest of Wildcat Country, and that was By Yourself, presented by Ice Shaker. Scooby, we sent you an Ice Shaker. They are a sponsor, courtesy of our buddy Chris Gronkowski. You have it right there.
I love my Ice Shaker. Fun fact: when I trained with Glenn Gronkowski, everybody, when we were trained together, people thought I was the other Gronk brother. So it's kind of funny. But yes, I love my Ice Shaker. It is very good. I use it every day. I am a veteran to the Ice Shaker game, by the way.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here. Use coupon code Wildcat Country at iceshaker.com.
Shane, you mentioned this as we brought our guest on before we started recording, but yes, I'm really excited for this one. The publisher of one of my favorite websites, College Football News, Pete Fiutak, is joining us here in Wildcat Country. Pete, really glad to have you on. The reason that we're having you on now in May is you wrote a really extensive column, I would say 3 solid pages on a preview for Arizona in 2022. And some of the language you use, now I don't want to spoil the entire article for people that want to go on and read it, collegefootballnews.com, but you were more optimistic on the Wildcats than most, especially coming off a 1-11 season. Being that, you follow 130 teams across the country, what are your reasons for optimism this year that you see with Jedd Fisch's team?
Yeah, I don't want to give away the ending, but Arizona doesn't win the national championship. I'm sorry, I don't mean to spoil it.
First Phil Steele keeps Arizona out of his top 10, and now this. The disrespect is ridiculous.
At least in football, they're probably not going to win the national championship this year. But first of all, there's nowhere to go but up, and secondly, the thing about this in the Jedd Fisch era is, and you guys know this better than anybody, he came there and realized, wait a minute, we should actually play defense here at Arizona. And that was kind of a new concept over the last few years. And sometimes you just got to tear it all down to build it all back up again. And you threw a bunch of guys into the mix last year, got a whole slew of new parts, transfers coming in, great recruiting class, and really just sort of the mindset that says we're going to eventually play defense here. The offense obviously needs to figure it all out and be a little more consistent and get parts there as well. But the hardest part of any team and any program to try to build back up again are the lines. And that just takes the longest. And offensive line hasn't been fixed, but it's a little bit better. And the defensive line certainly looks like it's going to be a whole lot better.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Pete, and also, and I'm not going to spoil your whole column, but you did note that the defense was quite a bit better last year than it was the year before that. Certainly, Don Brown had a lot to do with that. Obviously, he's gone now. Johnny Nanson's in. You mentioned the defense is returning 8 starters, some decent transfers, and guys coming out of high school. Do you see the defense overall taking a step forward, a step back, or kind of staying in neutral?
It's going to all keep going forward, and just because the talent level's raised. I mean, part of the problem was that all across the board, they just didn't have the guys, whether, it just didn't work from the Kevin Sumlin era, or guys left, or they just couldn't find the right fits. And again, the lines were the biggest problem of them all, is you just can't fit guys like that. You saw, case in point up the road, UCLA, that was the big problem at the end of the Jim Moore Jr. era, is that they just did not have the guys up front. And it's taken Chip Kelly several years to fix the offensive lines. You just can't do that in a snap. So it's going to be better on both sides of the lines there. But it gives a better starting 22 overall. And just it's just about the consistency. So the defense did take a step forward. And yeah, it'll take another step forward as long as the offense is helping them a little bit. The offense just didn't help them last year. And time again, that was one of the biggest problems with this offense, is even when things did go right, you'd have these bad turnovers and meltdowns. Couldn't keep a quarterback healthy, injury issues all across the board, which didn't help the cause there either. But you saw glimpses here and there where you could see that, okay, if you had a more experienced team and a more settled team, that maybe this team makes it a fight down to the end. This year, hopefully you have a couple more of those games like that, where maybe they do finish off an Oregon this year, where last year they melted down late.
Well, hopefully they finish off a couple drives here and there as well. That was their biggest of so many problems. That might have been their biggest. Let me ask you about Jayden de Laura, who I think we all assume at this point will be the QB1 going into the season. Where do you rank him in the Pac-12 among prospective starting quarterbacks going into the season?
Until last year, he wasn't really the main guy last year, so until late in the mix. So, but this year, look across the board. I mean, obviously Caleb Williams is the star at USC right out of the gate. And just off the top of my head, if you're going, I like who they got now. This guy Cameron Ward out of Washington State, now out of Incarnate Word. I think he's going to be a top pro prospect really soon. DTR, UCLA's been around forever. Cameron Rising. So you do lose Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. So that's, a step back. I'm completely blanking on who they got. They got somebody.
They got Emory Jones from Florida.
Thank you. The Emory Jones. Yeah. So that's in some ways a different sort of style. But last year going to this time, I thought Emory Jones was going to be one of those guys who rose up in the Heisman race just because he's got the all-around skill set. So de Laura's, at least he's a Pac-12 quarterback. I mean, he's consistent. I think that was the biggest problem. Again, you guys know better than I do, but the biggest problem last year was that, one, they just couldn't keep a quarterback healthy or consistent. And so I think, what's to say, it's 6 different guys throw at least 3 passes or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just never had the consistency there. So de Laura has been through the Pac-12 wars after a year. He was good last year for the Cougars, and, the guy can throw. So as long as he's there for a full 12 games, start from that and go on.
One guy you mentioned in the column, and I'll be honest, I haven't watched much of him. Just tell us about Jacob Cowing, wide receiver coming from UTEP. Guy seems like a star, and we have T-Mac, who's a 5-star prospect out of Servite in California. So Arizona's wide receiving core looks to be among the best in the Pac-12, just with those 2 guys. But tell us more about Cowing.
He's an NFL prospect, and he's a true number 1 guy. Deep threat for UTEP. And look, UTEP is UTEP. I mean, they had a great breakthrough year last season because they didn't play anybody and they beat up on all these really bad teams. But he was the one shining star of the bunch because he can get deep. He's got the size. I liked him last year at UTEP. One of my best friends in the world is Michael Lev, who works down there and covers your Wildcats. And he's like, yeah, he's a legitimate pro guy. He worked for Pro Football Weekly with me back in the day. The guy knows what these guys look like. He's like, yeah, you're not crazy to put him in the list of the top 32 pro prospects coming into the season. So he's got that number 1 type of thing that this offense just desperately needs. So if you've got a quarterback who knows how to wing it around the yard, and you've got an improved line, hopefully, that gives him a little time to work. And the thing about de Laura, too, is that he's used to playing at the wazoo kind of offense where you get the ball out of your hands in a hurry. So you don't necessarily need the offensive line to give you that 3.5 count before getting rid of the ball. He's going to be able to make that quick 1 read and go. At least that's what you're hoping for. And Jacob Collins is a guy who can make that play, but give him a little bit of time, get him down the field, and you can at least take that 1 home run shot at least once a game.
So in the preview article, you had a great term to describe Arizona's non-conference schedule. You said there's no 2-foot putt in there. So yeah. Arizona plays at San Diego State, home against Mike Leach and Mississippi State, and then against the FCS champion North Dakota State at home. I mean, you're right. There's no easy one there.
I don't know why they do this. I don't mean to cut you off.
You're right. I mean, it's brutal. Of those 3 games, which one are you giving Arizona the best chance to win?
I am a snob. I know it's North Dakota State. I know they are probably, if you were to rank them among the 131 FBS teams, they'd probably be at 60-ish to 75-ish. But I'll still say, you give me the FBS team with the FBS talent, then I will take that over the SCS. But look, Mike Leach's teams are weird. They sometimes just don't work. That offense certainly wasn't playing as well as it should have last year. The defense, though, has a lot of talent. And it is the SEC, so you do have that sort of thing happening there. And San Diego State, it is the opener in Snapdragon's a horrible name stadium if they get that thing open on time. But that's the opener for San Diego State, not just because of the stadium, but also that team's got a whole lot of new parts to the mix in there as well. So they're rebuilding a little bit. So any of those 3, I would not be shocked. They're not going to win all 3. If they can win one, if they could beat North Dakota State, that's not easy. But to my earlier thing where I cut you off was, for the love of God, if I'm an athletic director of a Power 5 program, I don't know why I don't have cream puff Tex, Central, lay up State, and to start the season. There's just no point, especially for a place like Arizona, where you want to measure yourself against these other teams, but you got to build up the program, and there's your base of wins. So
well, last year,
they lost to Cream Puff State last year.
Yeah,
so. I can't remember. Didn't they outgain Northern Arizona like 5 million to 5 or something?
They found super creative ways to not only lose games but find ways not to score when they're inside the 1 yard line. It was remarkable. Let me ask you about the conference schedule, Pete, and I'm going to save ASU for last because you mentioned the ASU in your column. Look at those 8 games before ASU in the conference schedule. Pick what are the two or three best chances Arizona has to pick off some victories.
Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me. Who do they miss again? They miss two.
I think Stanford is one of them that they miss, and I believe Oregon State is the other one.
That hurts too. It does not help that along with that non-conference schedule is that you have all the big teams from the north, and I'm assuming Washington's going to bounce back and be that. The problem is going to have to be they're going to have to catch teams on the right day. I mean, they're still coming into this season 12th in the Pac-12 in terms of where maybe 11th if you're counting Colorado in there. I think they're going to not quite take that step forward again from where they were from a couple of years ago. But they're just they have to be, for right now, if you're really looking at where you want Arizona to be, competitive. Again, we talked about the schedule. There isn't a sure thing base of say, okay, we've got 4 wins here. We can build off that and maybe sneak out 2 more and go bowling. It really is, is this team at least alive and kicking in every single game? And last year they were. There were times, there were stretches where you could say, okay, all they need is one big break and then this game might turn their way, and it always completely collapsed and went the other way. But that's just a new team with a new staff starting over. And so where's the win going to come from? Cal. I mean, I think Cal's going to actually be a lot better this year, but they're always a little bit bizarre. As Washington stepped it back up, Washington State, look, if you can lose to Central Michigan in a bowl game, you can lose to an Arizona team. But it really is more about, is Arizona just that talented enough where they can hang and just say, okay, Colorado, we're going to beat this team this week. Or you can hang with, I know you want to save Arizona State, but if Arizona State's struggling, or depends on who it is, you just got to have to, in those games where you're still in the game in the fourth quarter, pull that out. And that's where hopefully the talent, the lines, and the improvement comes in, and maybe you can get 4 games out of that.
Yeah, my last question for you, Pete, going back to ASU, Eric had read me some offshore odds last week that had, was it Arizona State 9-1 to win the Pac-12?
Yeah.
And Arizona 400 to 1.
I mean, there's no way that's going to be legit when it comes down to it, right?
So I'm thinking that I don't know if Arizona's going to be favored going into that game. Who knows what's going to be like, by around Thanksgiving. But I can't imagine the talent gap is going to be quite that big. And I feel like Arizona, especially playing at home against ASU for the first time in 4 years, because 2 years ago was COVID, it might be more of a coin flip than that lopsided a game. I mean, do you think that when they play each other, it might be, and rivalry games are unpredictable, but maybe more of a coin flip sort of situation?
It ain't going to be 70-7. So start with
let's hope not.
And go from there. Yeah, I mean, I actually like this Arizona State team. I think everyone's going to be down on them because everyone was so hot for them last year, and they obviously were just kind of okay. And, look, for all the good things Herm Edwards has done, forget all the bad things and the issues, they just haven't produced like they should. So, by the end of the season, and to the earlier point and how you're going to measure the Arizona season, where it's going to be hard to say, you'd love 6 wins in a bowl game would be so massive for this team. But again, look at the schedule. There just aren't that many layups there to say, okay, we can do that. So how do you get better from week to week to week? And even, every new coaching staff, I kind of say the same thing. It's, can you give the fan base something where they can say, I see where this is going to go. It's like the perfect example of that right now is Tennessee, where last year, okay, they didn't beat Alabama, they didn't beat Georgia, but you could see where Josh Heupel and that offense and that thing is going, and the fans are hyped because they're like, okay, we can see the future of what this might be. That's what you want with Arizona, where each week you find something new that says this team looks like they're getting better and better and better. And by the time Arizona State comes around, like you said, I kind of think the rivalry aspect's a little bit overrated. Either you're good or you're not. But yeah, those.
Oh, I'm gonna disagree with you on that one, Pete. But go ahead.
Little funky game. Who knows if things go south for Arizona State? Is it is Herm Edwards gone? Is it what happens? Because at that point, so there are a whole slew of aspects to this that could make that game really funky at the end of the year. But of course, if you win that game in your Arizona, that's your bowl game. Then you go into the offseason and everyone's happy, and then all of a sudden 2023 everyone's really jacked because now you got an experienced team coming back that looks like it's got a few pieces away from really being good.
I'm already calling my shot this year, Pete. I know it's May, but Arizona's winning that game. Okay, 2 more questions for you.
First, you can't say anything other than that.
I would.
Pete, this is a guy who almost booked a hotel. Was looking at hotels in Pasadena when Kevin Sumlin got hired. Okay.
Whoops, yeah, guilty as
charged. Not to revisit this, I am 1,000% with you. I thought that was going. If you're going to say where is that going to, his style in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
You'd thought, okay, defense is optional at times. You don't really need that. They'll just go out in there and win games 55-52. I am still shocked it didn't. I don't know why it didn't work, but I was shocked. I thought that was a great hire at the time.
Thank you.
That one.
See, there's some vindication, Shane. Finally,
okay.
Yes, you have 2 people who are wrong.
So there you go. Exactly. Exactly. All right. So 2 last questions for you. First of all, if you were Pac-12 commissioner, because we know Larry Scott was a disaster, how would you fix the perception of this conference, especially when it comes to football? Would Pac-12 after dark, for example, be gone, in your opinion?
I'd lessen it. I mean, it just throws a spotlight on the fact that the best games are played when 90% of the country's sleeping. So it always drives me nuts. What was it? It was the UCLA Washington State game last year that went a million overtimes, and was that shooter? Or was that 2 years ago? Whatever.
It was 2 years ago. Yeah.
It was 2 years ago. But you had Twitter, being all up and crazy at 2:30 in the morning Eastern time. It's like that was the best game of 2020, and like 5 people saw it. Yeah. So you do need to change that up. And I think what's really kind of missing, I'm really sort of shocked to not to go on this tangent here, but I don't know why they're not so hot on name, image, and likeness, because nobody would benefit more from that than the Pac-12, because look at the media markets you've got. I know nobody in San Francisco cares about college football, but that's a massive media market. Seattle's big. Phoenix is 6th biggest in the country. And then LA is obviously the dream of dreams, and that's where if you're not if I'm the Pac-12 commissioner at some point, you just realize that, look, USC's got to be good. I know it stinks. I know it's no fun, but on a national scale, when Ohio State's not great, the perception of the Big Ten is a little bit down. When Oklahoma and Texas aren't great, the perception of the Big 12 is down. And that's really it for USC. So Oregon's fine, but on a national scale, it's just still this cute program that changes its uniforms every week. UCLA hasn't gotten there yet, and Utah just doesn't move the needle. If USC is great and you have that superstar program combined with the potential of marketing with name, image, and likeness, then all of a sudden you have that. So what you really want, a long-winded way of answering your question here, is I would say, the formula that basically gave USC the coma penalty during the Pete Carroll era? Yeah, that's legal now. Let's do that. Let's get these guys in here, get all these marketing companies around these guys, have these superstar talents, agents all over the place. And there we go. Now we got our superstars here. And I think Lincoln Riley figured that one out fast.
If George Kliavkoff doesn't figure it out, Pete Fiutak's the guy. Last question for you. Tell us about collegefootballnews.com. You don't just cover college football. You cover everything, it seems like.
I do. I go to where the work is. It's seasonal. So NFL is a part of this thing too. There is obviously the tie-in with college football in certain ways, and people want to like the NFL caliber stuff, not as deep as we do college as well. And in college basketball, certainly, because the idea of college football being a 12-month-a-year thing, it's not really that true, because people really love college basketball. And that's obviously a quick 3-month thing. But now it's all college football from here on out. So now it's the previews of all 131 teams like this. And very soon, then all of a sudden there's that moment in mid-August where all of a sudden it clicks on and everyone dives into college football again. But it certainly is a lot of fun. We do a little of everything around here.
I don't know how you have any free time any time of the year, especially.
What else would I want to do? I get to talk sports and do this. What else am I going to do with my free time?
Well, we'd love to have you back on again, either, when you have some other free time. Great info, Pete. Thanks for coming on with Shane.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Shane, I'm kind of pushing the panic button on what's going on with Arizona basketball's inaction of bringing in new players outside of Filip Borovikinen. Yes, we talked about that before. We're bringing our next guest on the air, so we're going to talk about him later on. But Travis Graf, who is the a national basketball recruiting analyst with Rivals, does a great job on Twitter, among other things, obviously on Rivals.com. We're going to ask him a bunch of things about about players and such. The first one, I'm going to kind of go out of left field on you, Travis. First of all, thanks for joining us. Leonard Miller is a guy who was a five-star kid who suddenly out of nowhere is considering Arizona took an official to Tucson and then declared for the NBA draft. We don't know if he's going to stay in the draft or not. What do you know about him, and what do you think if he doesn't stay in the NBA draft, the chances of him ending up at Arizona are?
So there's a good side to this if you're Arizona and a bad side, because I actually just talked to a source really, really close with Leonard Miller, one of the decision makers, literally about 2 hours ago to get the latest. So yeah, whenever I first talked to Leonard Miller to do a story, I think this was a Jordan Brand Classic week. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was on the way up to Chicago and I put out a story talking about Arizona, and somebody around him told him to get in contact with me immediately and say, get everything out of the story about Arizona. Like, don't put out anything about Arizona. So they were wanting to keep it really quiet, which I found really interesting, because if that's usually the case, that means there's some smoke there. Some decision makers are trying to get some things done behind the scenes silently. But as of right now, I talked to a source close to Leonard Miller, one of the decision makers, and he said that as of right now, it's going to be Arizona or Kentucky if it's not the NBA. And living in Kentucky, being close with the Kentucky program, I think it would be Arizona if it wasn't the NBA. But with that being said, and I think his game fits Arizona much more than it does Kentucky, because I feel like Arizona would give him more freedom to rock out on the perimeter and do different things. But with that being said, it seems like it would take something off the wall for him to not be in the NBA at this point. He doesn't have a first round guarantee. Some people think he's going to be first round. I don't, but some people around him think that he's going to get that first round. But the thing with him is he's always wanted to be a pro. He doesn't want to go to school. But he's a unique kid too, because he's a 6'9" guard that can really run the show at the point in a pinch. But I think if it's college, which I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to be Arizona.
Do you happen to know, Travis, when he plans on making that decision roughly?
They've been saying next week for about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I think it'll be sometime next week, though, for sure. After all these workouts. Okay. So
NBA, Arizona, Kentucky, probably.
Yeah, that's
order. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, talk briefly about, because I know Eric's going to ask you about other guys they might add, but the two guys that they're bringing in for sure next season, Arizona, that is Dylan Anderson, and I think Eric nailed the name, Filip Borovikinen. I know it's hard to get a scouting report on those foreign guys. Tommy Lloyd obviously does a great job of bringing them in. Dylan Anderson's a local guy who's been committed almost since Tommy Lloyd got the job. Those two guys overall, what do you think they'll bring to the program?
I think Philip's got. I'm just gonna stick to saying his first name because
that's fine.
My twang's gonna mess up the last name, but I think he's gonna be a long-term, really nice piece, and I think he could have a more immediate impact than Dylan Anderson for sure, because he brings point forward ability on the court every time he steps on it, dribble creation. He's an ISO scorer on the perimeter, smooth scorer from multiple levels. It's kind of like you said, it's kind of hard to judge going against the competition that he does compared to American competition. But just the way he moves, the fluidity of it, his ability to get to his spots, I really like that. And I think that he can be a multifaceted player on the perimeter, even for Arizona. I think that that's probably his strength. His ISO, one dribble, step back, pull up is the best part of his game. But admittedly, I've only watched him on stream. I haven't gone overseas to watch him play. So
what are your thoughts on Dylan Anderson? Because I know he's actually dipped a little bit in Rivals rankings. I mean, he's still a top 100 guy, but he's dipped a little bit. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, we've got him at 88th nationally right now. He's going to be a multi-year guy. I think he just needs to add some strength, add some different things to his game. And I think that he's going to the perfect place in Arizona that's already got a couple front court pieces that he can learn behind. He's not going to be rushed. He's not going to be thrown into the fire too early. But he's a 7-footer that's comfortable putting the ball on the floor. Can step out, hit threes from time to time. Good feel for the game. Really methodical in his movements. You can see like the way that he thinks out the game. It's slower in his head. The game's really slowed down for him compared to how it did a couple years ago. But I think that he has some long-term upside. I'd just like to see him in the weight room for a couple years before I really make a huge prediction on him. But like I said, I think he's going to the best place possible for him. It's his hometown. He's not going to be rushed along. He gets to develop at his own pace.
And Eric, let me just ask you real quick before Eric dives in more to 2022. Kylan Boswell and KJ Lewis, two great guard commits for 2023 for Tommy Lloyd. We asked our buddy Matt Moreno about both those guys, but I want to get more of a national perspective. What are your thoughts on both of them? And is there any chance that either of them may end up reclassified?
I heard some Kylan Boswell reclassification months ago, but that's kind of died off. Not saying that it wouldn't, but it would be after Peach Jam. We'll know here in July, I guess. Yeah. But Kylan Boswell is a winner. He's a two-way guard, really good defender, always makes the right play, it seems, shoots well from the outside. He's kind of had a rough start to the spring. His whole AAU team really has, but he's a nice piece, and I think that he fits what Arizona wants to do at that lead guard spot really well. He's a guy that a lot of players want to play with. I'll get to that here in a minute. There's going to be a big visitor that I really like Arizona's chances for coming up. And I think that him and KJ Lewis is much better defensively than he is offensively, but those two combined is probably going to be the best defensive guard class in the 2023 class.
And I was just going to ask you about this big visitor that was coming, Kwame Evans Jr., who's a 5-star for 2023. So we haven't had a lot of 5-stars that have been interested in Arizona, it seems, since Tommy Lloyd took over. Tell us about Kwame and about, what kind of player is he, maybe a comparison, and what are the chances of landing him?
Yeah, so Kwame Brown, you don't want Kwame Brown.
No.
So Kwame Evans, he's an interesting case because the 2023 class isn't very strong at all, just in general nationally, but he's a guy that stayed toward the top of the class. He's another guy that hasn't had a great spring so far. He's somebody that he's been ranked so high for so long based off of potential because he's 6'10" and can do so many things when he's on the court, can pass, can defend like 4 or 5 different positions, even at the college level. The thing with him is everybody thinks that he can shoot, and he hasn't really been able to shoot for about a year now. But the tools and the upside is still there. And I think that he's going to be a great player like 2, 3, 4 years from now. He's a guy that I think is going to come down to Arizona and Oregon for him. I've currently got to pick him for Oregon, but that was old intel. I'm starting to lean. I think it's about 50-50 because I'm not sure. Mookie Cook is already committed to Oregon, and I'm not sure that those two could play together because Mookie's kind of an undersized 4. KJ wants to float out on the perimeter like he's a 3. So I don't know how those two could coexist. But we'll see. But I know that Kentucky is pretty much out of the picture for him, in my opinion. And Indiana, I don't think that they're really in the mix like that. I think it's going to be Arizona or Oregon, and I'm starting to really like Arizona's chances.
Boy, things are looking up, Shane. I'm already getting – Travis is making me happy. I've been kind of depressed for a while about things. Now we're starting to look up here. Leonard Miller, if he doesn't go to the NBA, maybe – Kwame Evans, maybe.
A lot of ifs still, Eric.
All right.
Don't book your Final Four tickets yet. No.
I'm not booking anything just yet, even though the Final Four, I believe in 24, is in Glendale. Just pointing that out. Yeah. All right. So Travis, as far as what you know about next year's Arizona team, so they lost Ben Mathurin. Christian Coloco is going to the NBA draft, and Dalen Terry has his name in there. Who knows if he's going to stay or go at this point? Probably comes back to Arizona, but we don't know. Do you know of anything else, anyone else out there right now that Arizona might get, maybe foreign potential, anybody locally that's still, outside of the transfer market that Arizona could get as far as high school kids go?
Outside of the transfer market, I haven't heard of any high school kids, unless it's going to be like a Kylan Boswell reclass. But I could see that hinging on what Dalen Terry does. what is your because I'm kind of in the dark on what Dalen Terry is going to do. I don't really keep up with the NBA side of things. What is the consensus with Arizona fans on what he's going to do? Because I don't see him getting drafted.
So Shane
Really?
and I,
Well,
Shane, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry,
worthwhile draft pick. I could see him coming back and increasing his stock.
I'll just throw it out there. We talked about this last week on the podcast. I was pretty certain Dalen Terry's going to come back, and then I see a couple mock drafts they have him going in round 1 ahead of Christian Coloco. So then I start thinking, well, maybe that plus you get guys and they get in your ear saying, dude, you're going to be a first round pick, you got to stay in. I was leaning toward him going, but then he sends out this cryptic tweet that maybe suggests he's staying. I don't know. So
I think he's a guy that instead of chancing it this year, because I think he's going to be a second round draft pick. Like mid-second round is where I would probably have him slotted, but I'm not an NBA draft genius like a lot of these guys are. I think, but on paper and like on film, he looks like a guy that could make a huge jump next year.
That's what I've said.
Top 15 to 20 pick. Because he's got all the tools. He's just got to be, and I think he would have a much bigger role without Benedict there next year. So.
Well, the rumor is, I guess from what I have read, that Arizona's coaching staff expects him to come back. He's testing the water,
smart,
and they expect him to come out. But if he tests well at the combine and maybe blows people away, that could change. So I would say right now the lean is that he comes back, but it's not certain, obviously.
And this is a really weak draft as well. Like outside the top 4, just kind of meh to me. So a guy with his tools, if he tests off the charts at the combine, I guess could lock up a first round pick, but I don't think anybody would give him a guarantee.
Yeah. And so that's where, I'm just, obviously Shane and I are concerned about the composition of next year's roster. I think he can be an All-American caliber player if he comes back. What's your take on Coloco? Is this a guy that should have stayed in school for another year, or are you good with him declaring for the draft?
I think he should have stayed another year, or at least left it open to come back. But I'm a huge fan of Christian Coloco. I'm a huge fan. And I think he's going to find his way into the NBA. I think he's going to be a cornerstone. I think he'll be a nice rotational piece for a team for many years. I don't know if he's ever going to be a star, which he could be. I think he could be a starter at some point. But I like his I think he'll be a 10 to 12 year NBA vet, make a lot of money. I think he'll do really well at that level. I'm really bullish on Coloco.
So in terms of potential transfers, Travis, do you have a feel at all on any guys who Arizona might be in the running for?
Another guy whose last name I really don't know how to pronounce, F.A. Obajidi. Is that right? Did I say that right?
Could be.
From Washington State.
Washington State, yeah.
Yes.
We're going to pass on his last name. I heard it, but I'm not even going to try it either.
Yeah. But I think that he would be a great piece for what Arizona's wanted to do. He dealt with a knee injury early this past season for Washington State, so his minutes dipped a little bit. Averaged 15, 11, and 3.5 blocks per game per 40. Great interior defense, perimeter defense, a little shaky closeouts. Has a lot of head scratching moments, but you see the flashes. Like the flashes are really good. Runs the floor well. I think that he would fit into the Coloco row essentially. So, and then Courtney Ramey, I've heard his name thrown around a little bit as well. Floor general, game manager, steady hand at point guard out of Texas. Provides outside shooting, playmaking, and then the best thing about him, he's got a limited ceiling, but he's got a high floor. So you know what you're going to get night in, night out. Plus, he's a vet.
We'll take that consistency. Last question for you, Travis. And again, we really do appreciate your time. We've talked a lot about NIL and how that's obviously changing the landscape of college sports. You're an assistant coach now. Do you go out and try to recruit these 4 and 5-star guys as international guys, not so much, but the national guys who play in the United States? Do assistant coaches, is it a must? You have to have knowledge about what your school is doing in terms of NIL and make that part of your pitch now?
Oh, most definitely. That's the recruiting world that we live in now. Because if NIL isn't the first thing that kid brings up, it's one of the next 2 or 3 things. It's definitely something that they want to talk about unless it's a dream school. But I mean, a lot of the schools like Arizona, bigger schools like that in basketball, certain schools in football, certain schools, if they dominate baseball, other sports, they know that that's going to come with it. But even the smaller schools, that's the first thing that comes to mind. If you're even a low major level, hey, what can you get me in NIL? Can you give me a car dealership? Can you give me it's the Wild West right now. I think it needs to be sanctioned a little bit, but right now it's a free for all. It's kind of fun, but it's also very crazy to follow.
All right, I lied. I have a follow up with this, Eric. Sorry, but just for example, like Dalen Terry, he's on the fence whether he might go pro or not. Obviously, NIL is probably not going to compete with NBA money, but is it possible for Arizona or like any school in a similar situation to try to get these athletes maybe some sort of like 6-figure NIL deal and say, hey, you come back at another year, you can at least make some good money and improve your game?
Yeah, Dalen Terry, in my opinion, is the type of situation that NIL should have been made for. I think that's what it caters to, is like players like him before this was available would have probably already jumped ship and just went all in on the NBA because they see the dollar signs. Now they see dollar signs when they go back to college. And while getting those dollars can improve the money that they'd be making at the next level. That's what I think is the most beneficial part of NIL is those kids. But there's a lot of shady stuff going on with NIL, to say the least. So
yeah,
it's definitely not being used how they thought it would be.
Yeah. Shane and I talked about that last week. It's just, I mean, like the kid Isaiah Wong out of Miami, where he wants more money. I mean, that's just insane to me. Last question. So you're back east. What is your perception of Arizona basketball as a whole? And do you see them as a tier 1 or tier 2 college basketball powerhouse in the years to come?
It depends on how deep we want to make the tiers.
8 to 10 teams.
Well, let me throw this out. If I may.
Yeah.
I think Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, maybe Villanova. Well, Jay Wright's gone, so maybe not Villanova now. Those to me that's like the top tier, like Final Four bust every year. And I would put Arizona maybe in the second one behind that.
Yeah,
that's just me.
I've always had Arizona on a yearly or decade basis, I should say. Arizona, Louisville, Michigan State, UConn, teams like that have always been the top of the second tier for me. But under Tommy Lloyd, and if they can they were a number 1 seed this past year. So if they can just continue to build on what he's started to build there, I think that they could ultimately jump a couple of the teams that you listed. Because Kentucky has slipped a little bit. Villanova, Jay Wright's not there, so who knows what they're going to be like. UConn and Michigan State are not what they used to be. Louisville's looking promising under Kenny Payne, but there's still a lot of question marks there. I think Arizona could be a top 5 program if things go right over the next few years.
What a great, positive interview we got here, Travis. You boosted all of our spirits. Everybody listening is going to get excited. I mean, great intel. Thank you so much for joining Shane and I. It'd be great to have you on once again in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome show, Shane. Absolutely loved it. Pete was great. Just great insight on the Wildcat football team. Jacob Cowling, I'm really excited to watch him. I mean, T-Mac Cowling, Jamari Joyner, who's one of my favorites. Your boy Majon Wright. I mean, that wide receiver room that Arizona has is scary.
Yeah, and I think back to the last time that Arizona had this stacked wide receiver room, and I think it was probably Nick Foles' first season. And then unfortunately, and that I'm just talking about wide receivers, but one of my biggest regrets still as an Arizona football fan is that Nick Foles never had a chance to throw to Rob Gronkowski because Gronk was out that year with a back injury. He redshirted, and then it didn't matter because he went pro. And obviously, don't blame him for that. Got my Gronk rookie card behind me, by the way.
Yes, you do. You have quite the collection, buddy.
I'm getting there. But yeah, so you throw in the wide receivers that Arizona has and Keon Burnett, the best tight end for Arizona since Rob Gronkowski, albeit as a true freshman, but you got to believe he'll see playing time right away. And hopefully that combined with Jaden Delora's elusiveness in the pocket will help offset some of Arizona's deficiencies at offensive line, which hopefully will be better this year, but certainly won't be an elite unit.
I'm really excited to watch football. We are 14, 15 weeks away from the first game. I am so freaking excited. It's going to be a common theme on Wildcat country throughout the summer. Okay.
Real quick. I'm going to make a bold prediction. You are going to be in person to witness an Arizona football victory this season.
Thank you, Shane.
It is a super bold prediction.
The last time, and we have said this, we've done 102 episodes of these, or 103 now, something like that. Yeah. The last win that I saw in person, you were with me And we were at UCLA, Arizona in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
A lot has changed since 2019 across the board in many areas of life. For all of us, a lot of people, a pandemic, etc.
Yeah.
I would just like to see, I would like the feeling of seeing a win. Unfortunately, if you don't know, of all the games that I went to, last year's Cal game was not one of them. And I was sick.
The only one you missed.
Sickness. Yep. And of course they won that game. Figures.
You will witness a victory, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. I hope it's multiple victories, Shane. All right, last one. Travis Graf, really good info.
Yeah,
Leonard Miller. If he doesn't go to the NBA, that sounds like a possibility. But Kwame Evans sounds pretty good for 23 to get a 5-star, and this team could be loaded in 2023 with talent.
Yeah, I think at this point you got to think maybe they're going to take a small step back this next season. But but they could go into the tournament, say, as a 4 or 5 seed and run the table. You never know. All you have to do is get in college basketball. It's real simple. Number 1, make the tournament. Number 2, win 6 games in a row. It's not easy, but it's a simple equation. And you think back when Arizona was a 1 seed or 2 seed in was it 93 to 3 seed the year before that? They lose in the first round both times. You fast forward a few years, they win the whole thing as a 4 seed. So
they win the Final Four in 94 right after.
Right,
that,
they did, my point. I'm trying to make the point that it doesn't. You just never know. They were a 1 seed, I think, in 94. So you combine the experience that they have. Hopefully, Dalen Terry comes back, and you never know what they could do. So as long as they get in, they have a chance.
As it stands today, and I will ask you this question over and over, but this is middle of May 2022. Which team on campus are you most excited for going into next season?
Oh boy. I'm kind of with you, Eric. I really want to see football. I want to see how good this team could be. I want to see things come together. I think our expectations are 4 wins at least. It be more and more competitive. Like Pete said, you're in games more often, and we saw a little bit of that last year. I mean, really,
a little bit.
They were in the last 2 games they weren't, but Utah, UCLA, BYU, the first game of the year, they were actually competitive in more games than not. So this year you need to get some wins. It's not just good enough to be competitive and win 1 game. You need to win at least 3. I know it's a tough schedule, but you got to win at least 3. And you know what? Like we said before, I would consider it a successful season. And I venture to say that most Wildcat fans would too, if they win 4 games, provided that one of them is against Arizona State.
All right. 4 this year, 6 next year, and 8 or 9 the year after that. How about that?
I'd be fine with that.
The schedule in the even years is more favorable than the odd. We've talked about that. I mean, it's true. It is.
Well, that's more or less what Mike Stoops did. It took a little bit longer, but his first 2 years, they were not good. They had the one signature win against ASU that first year, but they were not a good team. The next 2 years after that, they won like 5 and 6 games.
But they beat top 10 teams each of those years, though.
Yeah, but they were slowly turning that corner. And finally, in year 5, they beat ASU to get to the Las Vegas Bowl. They win that game. They win 8 games. They're a top 25 team the following year. So it took a little longer that time. And I think that this team, especially with their recruiting, they have maybe a little bit quicker to get to at least back to a bowl game. But I think Mike Stoops had that blueprint, and he didn't have the facilities or frankly, the assistants that Jedd Fisch does. So I think that a bowl game by year 3 is an expectation to me. I think even with a tougher schedule, and you never know how that's going to shake out either. The games that look tough now may not look as tough in October or November.
Arizona will be in a bowl game in 2023, even with a tougher schedule. I'm telling you that.
Okay. I can get behind that. Okay.
Yep. Going on record. Excited. Get excited, everybody. There's a lot of good things on the horizon. Thanks to Pete Fiutak from College Football News for joining us. Travis Graf from Rivals. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.